This is the Outlap F1 podcast featuring America's own Cody, Andy, and Deanna. Your one-stop shop for Formula One news, insights, race previews, and reviews. Join us on the Outlap. What is up, everybody? This will be Season 8, Episode number 16 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2026 Belgian GP review show. You've got Andy. I'm along with Cody tonight. We just wrapped up watching earlier this morning by the dawn's early light, the Belgian Grand Prix. It wasn't that early, but it felt like it for some of us. Cody, sir, how's it hanging, my good man?
I mean, I've been living at large all weekend. I happened into a lucky spot. Was able to go see Rush in Chicago last night.
Canada's finest.
Yes, it was a fantastic concert. It's kind of a last minute thing. I got very lucky that I was able to go. And it was awesome. And then today, celebrating relative's 80th birthday party. So it's all good. But now I am starting to feel the effects of this weekend, especially all of the booze that came with it. So, but I did get up this morning despite all that and still watched Spa. So I'm doing all right.
That's a trooper right there. That is a Boston trooper right there. But we will get into the race in just a little bit. But if you found our show, welcome along. We are, as always, glad you are here and you're spending your time with us. You can find our show on X now that it is back up. The World Cup final broke it for a small little minute there, and I wasn't entirely surprised, but it's back. Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and of course here on YouTube at Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all that. If you enjoy what you're seeing and you enjoy the content that we make and what you're hearing, do us a solid. If you're on YouTube, click the like or the subscribe button. A 5-star review on your favorite podcasting app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify will also help the show come back up a little bit better in F1-related search results. You can email the show, outlapf1@gmail.com. You can check out, thank you so much to Outlap F1 Nation, who continues to step up. You guys all know the names, but we have some newbies in here as well. Thank you so much. Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, Jonathan Scott, Rachel Fleming, Dave Doherty, and Brandon Bowler. As we were talking about, this race was on pretty early in the morning, and we need coffee to sustain ourselves, especially when you've had a night like Cody has had. You definitely need coffee to sustain yourself. So you can go to our link in our show notes. It's called buymeacoffee.com/outlapf1. If you want to donate a little bit of to the show, we would be most grateful. Do you have to do that? No, of course not. We're just glad you're listening. But if you'd like to do that, we will definitely take it and be appreciative of you doing that. All right, particulars now out of the way. We will start with our headlines of the day. Cody, I'll let you go first here. What you got?
My headline of the day is that at this point, I think it's safe to say Kimi Antonelli has at least a pinky finger on the championship trophy for this year. He's had a little bit of a rotten run of luck the last few Grand Prix. Little bit of a break here since his 5-win streak that he had going, but today he returned to the top. He looked pretty unstoppable, both in qualifying and the race. And not only that, but George Russell has the complete opposite fortune in the Grand Prix, loses maximum points to his teammate and biggest competitor for the championship. The margin has increased spectacularly again, and I'm thinking now that we're just about halfway through the season, I'm thinking it's starting to look like overcoming that is becoming a tall order.
Yeah, I mean, Kimi poured it on when he absolutely needed to. His teammate had some bad luck and some bad things happened to him, which we will get into. But my headline of the day is just the same face I kept making a lot of times throughout this race, where I kept saying, well, okay. I mean, that was just what I kept saying as this race kind of unfolded. And we're going to talk about some questionable stewarding decisions, which left a lot of us all kind of shaking our heads going, what are we watching? Because we all thought we did it one way, and apparently we didn't. To some really strange virtual safety cars that came out at some odd times, at weird lengths and all that. But throughout all that, Kimi Antonelli had himself a weekend, rose to the top. We'll talk about the great qualifying form he was on. And I think he's put his first fingers on this year's world championship, man, because yeah, taking advantage when his teammate had a bad day. George Russell picked a bad day to have a bad day. And yeah, I mean, he loses P2 in the championship, George does. It's Lewis Hamilton now is the P2 runner. But the cars look so different, especially around a track like this. And we've got some other high-powered circuits to come. Ferrari have to get some more go fast bits. There are other teams that need to get some go fast bits to make this a fight. But right now, I would say unless there's more unreliability for Kimi Antonelli that pops up, there's nothing in his game right now that tells me that he's probably not going to win this thing. But we have seen that the table turn before, but it's going to take something that pretty big in order to have that happen. All right. Well, we will rewind back to Saturday. How did everybody qualify for the Grand Prix? And I did manage to get this going. And if I can find it. There we go. That qualifying saw. All right. The music actually did play. Look at that. All right. The House of Pain only has supposedly one more week left of this. But P22 and P21, the Aston Martins, the unupgraded Aston Martins, did their thing yet again and were 3 seconds slower than everybody else. Almost 4 seconds slower than the pole time. Or 6 seconds if you actually get all the way to Q3. But Lance Stroll, P22, Fernando Alonso, P21. Fernando Alonso at least has something to be happy about. Congrats to Spain on winning the World Cup. And that's my soccer reference for the night. P20 and P19 were Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas, respectively. P18 was Esteban Ocon. P17 was Alex Albon. P16 was Ali Behrman. P15 was Carlos Sainz. P14, Nico Hulkenberg. P13, Franco Colapinto. P12 was Pierre Gasly. And P11 was Liam Lawson. Top 10 from 10 to 1, and this is pre-grid penalties, because Lord knows there were lots of them. P10 was Isaac Hadjar, who was going to go to the back with a whole slew of changes. P9 was Gabby Bortoletto. P8 was Arvid Lindblad. P7, Oscar Piastri. P6 was Lewis Hamilton. P5 was Charles Leclerc. P4 was George Russell. P3, this is again pre-penalty, was Lando Norris. P2 was Max Verstappen. And in P1, it's a 3/10 gap. It's the biggest qualifying margin on the season. Kimi Antonelli, a 144.361, the pole time here. All right, Cody, big thoughts in the qualifying.
I think I just need to stop watching Q1 for the rest of the season because it gives me too much hope. We're sitting there watching Q1 and the times coming in, and you got Max close to the top, and you got Lando close to the top, and George and Kimi seem like they're struggling, and getting all my hopes up that maybe something exciting will happen this race, and maybe my boy Max has a chance. And then Q2 happens, and reality sets in, and Mercedes turns up the juice on their engine, and suddenly we've got Kimi Antonelli like 3/10 out in front of his nearest competitor. So, yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that Mercedes was taking it easy there, just trying to get through Q1 without running off the track or anything wild happening, and then they really turned it away. So that was my biggest thought from this. I was still very impressed by the fact that, Lando looked like he was going for pole at one point, all the way up into Q3. I think he had the best run, was it on the first run or at the end of Q2 or something like that. He was looking really, really good, and it was kind of a sour point because he'd already taken new power unit components and was going to have a 10 place grid penalty. So I was like, oh, great. Now you might be on pole, and it's the worst time for that. But ended up still having a very good result. And you got, Max Verstappen getting up onto the front row, which had me excited. Although the gap to Kimi was so large, I was like, even if he beats him off the line, I don't think that's going to how it's going to end.
Yeah, I would have really loved to see what Lando could have done with his second lap had he actually been able to stay on the track and complete it, because it was a mistake. The same corner now, a corner that we don't normally think would be problematic, turned out to be very problematic here. basically coming out of, I think, the turn 11. And it's this little tiny left-hander going into a small little straight before then the track kicks down to a right-hander. But what it was doing is catching lots of people out. Pierre Gasly had a major crash there in one of the practice sessions. Lewis Hamilton had a big crash in the final practice session. Kudos to the Ferrari mechanics for getting his car back together in order to be out there and setting competitive lap times. So there was some discussion on whether or not he was going to make it, but he ended up doing so. We get to Q3 and Lando puts together this gigantic purple second sector that just had me, I literally went, whoa, where did that come from? Because like he'd been good, but he wasn't like that. And then all of a sudden he raises to P1 and I went, well, he's only 19 hundredths up on Antonelli. And the story of this season, you don't have to watch Q1. You don't have to really watch Q2. You don't even really have to watch the first runs in Q3. It's the last run in Q3. I don't know if they just have a magic little button or a little switch that they push that says, we're going to push our engine now for the first time and we're going to flex exactly how good we are, because everybody else is trying their damnedest to set anything better. But both Russell and Antonelli went significantly quicker in their second runs. Yeah, it's only P4 for George, and we'll talk a little bit about why later. But Kimi Antonelli just, it doesn't seem to matter. He doesn't need to even leave it till the end. He didn't necessarily have to do it here. Max tried to put together a lap. Lando was up on I wanted to see if he could have finished that second sector, but was not to be. He didn't wreck the car, which was fortunate for him. The
It was
Ferraris.
also,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it was kind of interesting the strategy Red Bull was going for in Q3 as well. They pretty much just decided that they weren't going to let Isaac Hadjar even go for a time, and they used him as punching, as the commentators like to say, punching a hole in the air for Max to try to give him a little bit of a draft so that he could go faster down those last sequences of more straight areas at the end of the lap. And it did, it seemed like it was helping. Got Max all the way to the front row.
Yeah.
Obviously wasn't helping enough for pole, but I did think it was kind of interesting that maybe they were just figuring that, hey, Isaac's going to be able to probably make pretty quick work of, Bortoletto and Lindblad in front of him, although Lindblad is very aggressive with defending position, so you never know what's going to happen there. But I did think it was maybe kind of a little bit of bullshit for Hadjar that they didn't even let him take one run.
Well, they knew that he was going all the way to the back because they had even announced it wasn't just an engine change. It was like an engine control electronics and all that.
That's
so
right,
he knew he was going to the back regardless. So, it would have been interesting to see where he would have slotted in had this been like a legitimate, qualifying attempt. And
Mm-hmm.
And I get the strategy. And if you're Red Bull and you're trying to make Max Verstappen as happy as he possibly can be at the moment, this is kind of what you go do. And once you kind of made that decision, that makes that call, I think, a lot easier. And I was kind of surprised that McLaren didn't try the same thing with Piastri. But I think
point.
Lando was doing so much better than Piastri was, at least in terms of form, that they kind of let him go. And I know they talked a little bit about, on, I think, the Sky broadcast, would you let Lando go out and do a second run, even though that first run was probably as good as he was going to do? I would say you're trying to mitigate that penalty as far as you can. We've seen in races here before where Max can come from P11 and is right up there in the podium before. So if suddenly you found yourself with this great race, with this great pace that you can't explain why you have it, you might as well try to make the best of it, at least here. So I thought that was the right call. That one lap on a set of tires, I don't think is going to kill it for the race. If you got to the point of needing a set of soft tires, which nobody really wanted to run, that wasn't going to be the preferred tire anyway. But so I didn't find that to be as big of a point as some had chosen to make it. This, I thought maybe the Ferrari updated power unit and things would be a little bit better. It clearly wasn't. But good surprises. Gabby Bortoletto and the Audis looking a lot more competitive for the second straight week. The Racing Bulls looking again very competitive for the second straight week as well. So there were some good things, and there were some things that kind of surprised me. I was surprised at the delta between Antonelli and Russell, and as we found
Mm-hmm.
out later on Sunday, there were some reasons why. Apparently, George wasn't given the latest spec of the engine, and
Mm.
for some reason, or it wasn't maybe not the latest spec of the engine, but there was some reason that he was significantly down on battery power, and when the Sky Guys like analyzed the 2 laps, it basically came down to the way that they were deploying, and
Mm.
Antonelli deployed. I hate to use this word, but it's the only word that fits, more efficiently than George Russell did, and therefore he was able to eke the lap time out that much better. All right. We will turn and focus on the Sunday race. We will start with the back markers. And because we're going to do that, we're probably going to talk about all of the fun that happened on lap 1. Rachel Fleming, I apologize. This is going to be painful, but we're going to get through it. We're going to hold hands and we're going to get through it. We're going to press on. The first non-classified finisher, unable to complete a lap, only making it as far as the end of the Camel Straight. That was George Russell. Tries to make a move, runs out of energy deployment and getting sucked in, and then cuts across Lewis Hamilton, who I didn't think had anywhere to go, and day done for George. The other non-classified finishers were Sergio Perez in the Cadillac and Lance Stroll, who made it 25 laps, but no further. P19 was Fernando Alonso, P18 Valtteri Bottas, P17 Esteban Ocon, P16 was Carlos Sainz, P15 Alex Albon, P14 was Ali Behrman, and P13 was Nico Hulkenberg. All right, well, the big incident on lap 1, Cody, what'd you see?
I saw a penalty that was applied unfairly, in my opinion. So, lap 1 incident, everyone is driving really close together. This always happens. You're going into a slower turn. It's a quick right and then left. And George Russell is trying to maybe make back some positions that he lost. He's being maybe a little opportunistic, trying to make a move around the outside of Lewis Hamilton in the going right portion so that he can have that inside line going into the next part of the turn. But he is right on the outside of Lewis there. I imagine it seems like Lewis lost a little bit of grip, and in trying to correct the car, he turns to the left and runs right into George. George spins off into the gravel and can't get it out, and that's the end of his day. Now, they ended up giving Lewis Hamilton a 5-second penalty for this, which I thought was unfair because historically, lap 1 incidents have been looked at with a little more leniency because all the drivers are bunched so close together at the very beginning of the race. A lot of moves. It's where you see the most moves trying to happen. So, crap happens. Everyone's so bunched together. But they decided to give a penalty in this case, which, I don't really think there was anything more Lewis could have done to avoid that. He was already, it's not like he wasn't giving him room. He just seems to have lost control of the car a little bit, and George was right there.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost say that this is almost as close to a 50-50 thing as you're going to get. It's the first lap. It's the first lap in race conditions that these cars have gone all the way up Eau Rouge and onto the Camel Straight and all that other good stuff. We don't know what the differences in the energy deployment was. Why? Because we never saw any of the graphics. We'll come back to that. So you're given all of those things, the unknown that you don't know, and you're trying to judge this incident, and it looked like a lap 1 incident. It looked like
Gee, it was.
right because it is, and my thought was, where do you expect Lewis to go? He can't disappear. He's in 2 different battles at the same time. He's trying to fend off George for a position, but he's also trying to stay in the draft and try to get forward on 2 other positions there. So I didn't expect Lewis to disappear, and George does kind of chop on him on the outside. Now, we've talked about for a long time that it seems like the new way that the stewards want to evaluate these things is who's on the inside. And the guy on the inside has so much more preferential treatment, and that the guy on the outside effectively has to complete the move almost before they get to the corner. George is like 3/4 of the way past, but he's not all the way past. And you know what George has to do in that situation? He's got to slow down. So where does Lewis go? Into the same space where George is slowing down. Like George is hanging it out on the outside. I thought that, like, if anybody, George should have been the one to call, okay, this isn't going to work. Whatever's going to happen, I want to preserve me running in the race, so I'm going to back off ever so slightly. He didn't do that. It's 2 goes into 1, does not work. But I didn't see Lewis like deliberately trying to turn the wheel to the other side to go at George or anything like that. I mean, it's unfortunate the result of it, that George wrecks out. And the thing I just left that entire incident wondering, okay, if they just bang wheels and George keeps running and maybe he goes off and then has to give the position back, are we talking about a 5-second penalty in that case? When it's really supposed to be a 10-second penalty, but they said that there were mitigating circumstances, so we're only going to give him 5? What kind of BS nonsense is that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's either a lap 1 thing or it's not a lap 1 thing. The stewards literally tried to play both sides and therefore end up pissing everybody off in the process. Just, it wasn't a penalty. It was not a penalty.
Yep, I agree. Other things that we got here is, unfortunately, we got Fernando Alonso finishing 2 laps down on the longest circuit on the calendar. So, continued embarrassment for Aston Martin. But like you said, hopefully this will be the last Grand Prix where we see Aston Martin in quite so poor shape. They should be bringing an upgraded car. We're hoping to Hungary, where maybe we'll see some competitive life in them. Who knows? But yeah, this was just continuing the pain for Fernando Alonso.
Yeah. I saw a video where apparently, like, on the lap in, which isn't really an in lap because on this Grand Prix, because the lap is so long, they don't do an in lap. They literally go to the end of the pit lane, they do a U-E and kind of come in reverse. And Alonso crosses the line and apparently felt was so loving his car, he decided to do a burnout in frustration as he's going around the Lasource hairpin there to get into the pit lane. So, yeah, definitely not a happy bunny. But he's probably happy tonight. Like I said, Spain won the World Cup, so him and Carlos Sainz had something good to talk about. Speaking of Carlos Sainz, another guy who was not happy with his team right now was Carlos Sainz. Very, very active on the radio, basically saying, this wasn't the strategy I wanted, or you didn't do the adjustment that I asked for, and next time, would you please talk to me about it? And it kind of reinforces the whole thing. Williams are just, for a team that I seriously thought was going to be one of the teams to watch, it just doesn't look good right now. And to James Vowles' credit, he's gone on and he said, like, look, we got to give these guys a better car. They're not able to do what we expect them to do. But it comes down to the fundamental thing. That car is still overweight, and until they get that thing sorted, it's going to continue to be a struggle for them for sure. A bit of positivity for the Haas. I know it's only P14 for Ollie Behrman, but it's better than what they had been doing. They did bring some updates to this track for this weekend, so it was a little bit better. But again, they still need to get into the development war if they want to be more competitive as well. Nico Hulkenberg in the Audi, kind of just a ho-hum race for him. Nothing really spectacular there as we kind of close out the back markers. All right, so moving into the midfield and the podium, we'll just kind of talk about both of these together because ended up being kind of one big group. P12 was Liam Lawson. P11 was Pierre Gasly. P10, getting into the points, was Franco Colapinto in the Alpine. P9, Arvid Lindblad in the Racing Bull with some very, very, very aggressive defending. P8 was Gabby Bortoleto, definitely getting the moniker of the best of the rest here. 2 consecutive points finishes for Audi is a uptick for them. P7, we will talk about one of the faster cars on track that only managed to get to P7, and I'm a little disappointed about that, and we'll talk about why. That is Lando Norris in the McLaren. P6 was Isaac Hadjar, who I thought the Red Bull guys if you thought they were not being fair to him on Saturday for making him go to the back, they certainly made it up to him on Sunday with some great strategy work to get him to P6 on the day. P5 ends up being Oscar Piastri and the other McLaren, up one position from qualifying. I think you kind of call it a solid day for him, especially given the damage he had, when we'll talk about the other incident that should have been a penalty but wasn't. And P4 ends up being the other Ferrari in Lewis, or the first Ferrari on the road in Lewis Hamilton. P3 ends up a podium for Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. P2, I thought one of the better drives of the day, keeping at least Kimi Antonelli honest throughout, was Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari. But he was on another level, and if it wasn't for a really poor timed pit stop regarding a virtual safety car, I think this would have been one of those 15-second victories romps. That was Kimi Antonelli in the Mercedes. Not going to be challenged very much here. Cody, lots to talk about. Where'd you like to start?
Also, in the midfield there, as you were alluding to, we saw a penalty that was perhaps not called. So opposite of what we talked about before. And this one is between Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri, I believe, is pretty much in the same part of the track as well.
It's the same corner. That's the best part of this. It's the same corner.
Oscar Piastri trying to make a move around the outside of Charles Leclerc. And even as we're watching on the replay there, he was already, as he was going around, already being pretty squeezed by Leclerc. And wasn't getting out of it, but like it looked like Piastri wasn't going to like really try to hang it around the outside. But even so, Leclerc may be trying to position himself better for his run into the corner, ends up moving just a little too much outside, makes contact with Piastri. It seemed like Piastri ended up kind of the worse off out of it as well. We did see some carbon fiber flying off. And this one was reviewed and not called a penalty, even though to me, it seemed pretty clear that this one was Leclerc's fault for pretty much squeezing Piastri out of road. And, that's not cool. So I don't get why this one was not a penalty, while the lap one incident, which we already said had mitigating factors of being a lap one incident, that one was a penalty. So yeah, some very strange calls from the stewards this race.
Yeah, this goes back to my headline where I just kept saying, well, okay. And I just kind of shook my head because I saw the incident. I said, that's on Leclerc. I heard Piastri's radio that said, look, if I don't back out of this the way that I did, we're going to have a mega crash. And I believed him. That we've seen that exact spot have some pretty bad crashes throughout the history of this track. So to me, once I saw that Lewis gets the penalty on the first lap, even though I disagreed with it, I said, okay, the precedent has been set. We're obviously calling this really tight today. Okay, don't necessarily agree with it, but all right, as long as we're consistent, I'll swallow hard and kind of deal with it. And then I see what's effectively the exact same incident, except it's not on lap one. Oscar was getting a really nice run down the straight and had more deployment in his pocket than Leclerc did at that particular moment. He pushes the button, and we all know that once you push the button, it's going to go. The car is going to do once the button is pushed. The car is going to go. You're kind of committed to that at that point. Is he as far forward as maybe Russell was? Not necessarily, but he was coming. It was going to be the exact same move that Russell was trying to do. And Leclerc forces him off, and they touched. They didn't wreck. And the thought I see it is, now, when I read the document, the stewards made the judgment that there was no way that move was being pulled off by Piastri. And because of that, that's effectively Leclerc's corner then. And to me, you can't say that because you're making a judgment on something that you have no idea what's going to happen, because it's the first time these cars are on this track. You have no idea what the deployments are, situations are. And you're trying to put yourself in the cockpit when you shouldn't be. You should call the same incident as you saw it, regardless of where the cars were and how fast they were going. To me, is the only two pieces of data that you need to see. And for whatever reason, they saw it in the exact opposite direction of the one that they called 17 laps earlier. don't get it. Doesn't make sense to me. So again, I just sat back and went, well, okay, whatever.
So you got that one. Lewis Hamilton's day did not get a whole lot better. Now, I got to say, for having a penalty on lap one and what I'm about to describe happen as well, fourth place, pretty commendable for him. I will give him that. However, there was a pretty, I wouldn't even say it was a near miss. It was something bad that happened that could have been a lot worse, and that is that Ferrari had an unsafe release during Lewis Hamilton pit stop, where Lewis goes, the mechanics are not all clear of the vehicle, and one of the mechanics pretty much gets tipped over and kind of falls over the wheel pretty much of the car as Lewis is trying to go. Now, Lewis stops right away, pretty much says exactly what anyone would say on the radio in such an instance, which is, "Oh shit, is he okay?" And it seems that he was. So that is the near miss part of it. But it was certainly an unsafe release. You never want to see a situation where someone in the pits there is going to get injured. And shit happens in the pits. You're trying to turn around a four-wheel tire change on Formula One cars as quickly as possible. They're trying to get in and out as quickly as they can. So things like this shouldn't happen. I feel like they're going to happen every once in a while, but this one really kind of stunk because you really get that feeling that it was on Ferrari for giving Lewis that green light when he was not in a position to go. And as you were explaining to me, that incident ended up being noted and then reviewed after the race. You got a classic situation of results of penalty inquiries not coming out until a couple hours after the end of the race. But I believe you said that they didn't apply any time penalty here. They just issued a fine, right?
Yeah, they issued a fine of 30,000 US, which translates to like 15,000 or something euro or something like that. Or I saw it in British pounds. I think maybe that was the 14,000 British pounds or something, of which a third of it is going to be suspended, assuming that Ferrari can provide the FIA a roadmap or a solution to try to make sure that this type of thing doesn't happen again. Now, the way that I saw how the pit stop happened is it's a normal stop, but because they were changing the compound of tires, what the also thing that was going to come with it was a defined and clear front wing change. And what happens is the tire guy finishes the stop, the tire goes on, and he's going to reach in to where to make the turn on the front wing. Lewis gets the green light and goes, and while the guy's leaning in, that's when he got hit. And, fortunately for the guy in question, he falls backwards and not forwards. And it didn't end up being any worse than, he took a bit of a lick, but, he did, fortunately for all of us, look like he kept on ticking and looked to be okay. So you end up in this situation where as soon as I heard it investigated after the race, again, I kept going, well, okay, what other data did you need? You have all of the cameras at your disposal, and this thing was at lap 30 of 44. You had a good 30 minutes of race time to decide whether or not this thing was really an unsafe release or not. And then I get it. I tried to say, okay, they wanted to hear from the team rep to understand what happened. Okay, I'll take that. That meeting was supposed to be at like 4:15 in the Belgian afternoon, which was not that far after the race ended. Why it took them to make this decision for another 2.5 hours is absolutely beyond me. Everybody at the track had left. Half the all the post-race stuff had ended. The US show ended. The Sky Sports thing on Apple TV ends. And we don't really know what the result is. And people are speculating and they're interviewing Oscar Piastri like, well, it could be fifth or it might be fourth if Lewis gets a penalty. It was a 2-second piece of footage that you had to review. What possible thing were you looking at for 2.5 hours? The scrutineering report with all the weights and measurements and all that stuff came out before this decision.
Yeah,
Come
it just
on, guys. What are we doing?
it just doesn't make sense on this one. Like, a guy almost got run over. Like, it's pretty clear it is that it's an unsafe release. I don't know if it's just that they want to have like the supporting documentation all filled out and stamped and everything by the time they actually issue this, but like, it's Formula One. These types of decisions have an impact on what's going to happen during the race. So really what you should be doing is you should just look at it, make the call. Sometimes, let's be real, it's the FIA. A lot of the time you make the wrong call, but you live with it. I think this one, you probably had enough supporting evidence to, if anyone questioned it, like Ferrari, you can just point at the footage and say, your dude almost got run over. What do you want us to do?
I mean, this is where like they could get so a cue from IndyCar. I don't always agree with the decisions that IndyCar Race Control does, and sometimes there's a separate whole IndyCar podcast that talk a lot about the decisions that IndyCar Race Control does, and you should go listen to them, especially ones with Alex Rossi because that dude's a gem. But that having been said, they make the call and they kind of stick with it, and they just kind of say, "This is the call we made at the decision based on the evidence we had." And everybody knows when they walk out of the race, unless it is a technical infringement or somebody's car is underweight, that stuff, yeah, that's going to have be after the race. Because you don't have access to the cars. You can't weigh them and do all of the tests and software downloads and make sure those fuel samples are there and all that. I get that taking a couple hours, so that's fine. But this is a sporting thing that could have been easily looked at, reviewed. You had 20 minutes of at least race time to figure out whatever you were going to do. And whatever. I mean, it's numbing, and it becomes so difficult as a fan to try to explain, well, why was Lewis given a penalty early, but Leclerc in the same car in the same corner later on wasn't? And now we have this thing that obviously we all saw we all knew what we saw. Doesn't he get a time penalty, but gets a fine, which, yeah, I get it. It's more of a penalty on the team. But what message are you saying by that? That you can just buy your way out of a safety problem, even if it is a safety problem? I don't know. It was frustrating. And again, I just come back to my headline. I kept just going, well, okay,
Yeah.
whatevs.
Moving toward our front runners here, Max Verstappen did manage to very briefly take the lead on lap one. However, because of where he deployed, he was then left vulnerable by Kimi Antonelli deploying down the Camel Straight. And Kimi quickly takes that back. Max ends up losing a little more than first place going into those turns and the whole George Russell incident. But it comes out the other side of the race with a podium, which I felt pretty good about, especially thinking that the car was not super strong this weekend and they kind of went backwards on their upgrades by putting the older spec of wing on there that doesn't do the Macarena flip. Charles Leclerc ends up having himself a very good race and very well, less briefly. I had to make sure I got the correct sequence of words there. Less briefly had the lead. I'm still messing it up. Charles Leclerc had the lead for a little while. There we go. Because of the second of a couple of strange virtual safety cars that we had during this race. So I guess, according to the commentators, there was a statement put out by the FIA to the teams and drivers that was something along the lines of, if we end up with gravel on the circuit, we will call a virtual safety car to clean it up. And that happened twice here during the Grand Prix. The first time that it happened, apparently the marshals were able to clear the debris very quickly. I don't know if it was gravel or other debris there, but either way, they cleared it very quickly. So quickly, in fact, that no teams were able to try to benefit from that virtual safety car and get a pit stop in with a smaller time loss. However, the second virtual safety car was held for quite a bit longer. And we didn't really see, we saw the steward running off of the track. It seemed like it was over, but I guess maybe they didn't get all the debris and they had to go back out after cars went past. But either way, that one was in place for longer. It was enough time for Ferrari to pit uh, Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. And Charles Leclerc, because of this, ends up getting out after his pit stop in front of Kimi Antonelli. Now, this didn't end up making a big difference in the long run because Antonelli's pace was so strong on the day that he caught back up to Leclerc, passed him, and said, see you later. And he didn't end up actually finishing too far out in front of Leclerc. Leclerc managed to hold on well enough to finish just under 2 seconds behind. But again, Kimi looked pretty much in the zone all this weekend. Fantastic qualifying from him for pole. Pretty much was in control of the race from lap one, getting back past Max Verstappen, and I think would have been firmly in control without that virtual safety car. And even with that, he still made it look pretty easy.
Yeah, my other comment was the biggest challenger to Kimi Antonelli winning the race today was the virtual safety car, because it's the first one that doesn't last for very long, that Mercedes thought they were going to get a cheap pit stop, and all of a sudden they decide to bring him in after it had already ended. And so he's getting no benefit from it. And now suddenly the nice little 4 or 5 second lead that he had is now gone, and now he's no longer racing in clean air. And it definitely affected his pace, for at least for a bit. The other thing that happened when we get to virtual safety car number 2 was, to me, a very odd decision by my boys in McLaren, because look, I understood that Lando Norris was going to start from, it turns out to be P13. The Sky guys completely screwed me up. They kept saying he was going to start 12th because they thought Lando's penalty was announced first, but really not, because he out-qualified Hadjar, so there we move Hadjar to the back, and it's all confusing, but anyway. It was 10 places. He started where he was supposed to. It's fine. But he had himself a really good race car under him, and he was picking his way through the field. He was coming up really nicely. He gets all the way up to P5, and he passes his teammate, and his teammate comes back at him a little bit, and him and Oscar had a little bit of a ding-dong, but it wasn't nothing bad, nothing out of the line by any of them. And then we get the second virtual safety car. Now, at that point, Piastri had gotten back in front of Lando, and I get Piastri gets the preferred strategy and gets to come in first. But I thought, when you get the second virtual safety car and Lando is a pit stop down on everybody else, would this not be the time to try a double stack? I literally yelled, double stack, double stack. And then I hear Lando's radio, no, we're going to stay out. And I went, oh God, what'd you do that for? Because now he's going to go back out, and he ended up taking the lead. And I thought, okay, then this is the clean air move, and then they're going to try the clean air thing, and that clearly wasn't enough. He held the lead for a few laps, but 20 laps on a set of hard tires is 20 laps on a set of hard tires. One is going to be a lot faster than the other. That's just physics. That's just how that works. And Lando eventually gets overtaken for first place by Leclerc and then second place by Antonelli. And they waited until, I thought they waited 2 laps too long, in my opinion, to eventually bring Lando in, because I think what they were trying to do was they were trying to build a bridge to a soft tire later on to try to get some overtaking done late. But then they ended up doing the thing that they love to do, which is be in the middle yet again. They countered from that strategy. They pivoted to a different strategy. It was too late for that strategy to work, and he's 10 seconds behind Hadjar when he comes back out. Now, he then proceeds to lay down 14 laps, of which I think 12 of them were the fastest laps of the Grand Prix. However, it wasn't enough. He gets right on to Hadjar's bumper and was unable to make the move at the end there. Lando obviously had a quick car, but in my opinion, the double stack was the thing to do in that situation. Yeah, if you lose 5 seconds, you end up losing 5 seconds on his pit stop anyway due to a bad rear tire change. But you take that out of it. Still, to me, the move was double stack, get him on the same strategy as everybody else, and he probably has the pace to be maybe on for a podium.
Yep, a little bit of a rotten one from McLaren. They have shown time and time again that they get the willies when it comes to doing a double stack,
which just boggles my mind. Or it's that, and it's the same thing that kind of haunts them when the race doesn't go to plan, they get lost and they don't really know what they want to do. And they almost seems like they have a committee meeting about trying to figure out what to do. And they did eventually get to what I thought was the right thing, which Lando was getting slowed up. You might as well get him off of these tires. That's the right idea, but it came 2 laps too late. The second Leclerc got past him for the lead, that next lap I would have boxed him because you had the maximum track position that you were going to try to defend. And yeah, if you come out behind Hadjar, you're not coming out 10 seconds behind. Even if you have the bad pit stop, maybe it's 5 seconds, but that's at least comebackable, and maybe you could get up to P5 out of that. But I don't know. It was just frustrating. Yet another time where I just went, well, okay. As for the lead, Leclerc did, I thought, a really nice job of trying to defend the lead for as long as he did. But eventually it was just too much Mercedes power on the Camel Straight, leading to Antonelli making the move. But I was heartened by the fact that Antonelli didn't just drive off into the distance. I thought at least it was a good thing that Leclerc kept him honest. It's only a 2-second gap there at the end. But Kimi Antonelli, because now he maxes out on points, his main rivals were P4 and P22 respectively. He basically pulls a 47-point gap out on P2 in the drivers. That's a pretty big matzo ball to overcome, unless there is another DNF in his future. And I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but you almost feel like something like that is going to have to happen, even if Lewis or George can get past him. And it's only been DNFs that have had that scenario happen. I don't see where you're going to get enough. The math now starts to work really much in Kimi's favor here. All right. Well, that, ladies and gentlemen, is your Belgian GP. We're going to take a quick break. We will re-rack. We'll come back. We'll tell you what this did to the points. We've kind of already alluded to some of it. We'll show you where the drivers are. We'll show you where the constructors are. We'll then open it up to your takes on what you saw this weekend in the fan email segment. We've got our 3 normal contributors here. We'll hand out some awards. We'll talk a little bit about predictions. We kind of did like the World Cup in the prediction segment, but we'll talk about what that means. So come on back. You will not want to miss it.
You are listening to the Outlap F1 podcast, and we'll be right back after this quick pit stop. Grab your flu powder, broomstick, or apparate to your favorite audio streaming service to join the discussion on Hogwarts, a podcast, where Dan and his friends have in-depth chapter-by-chapter breakdowns of each Harry Potter novel. Join the group as they dive into the magical world and discuss plot points, analyze character development, and occasionally go off the rails. Whether you're a muggle who's new to the series or a pure-blood wizard who won't need a remember-all, Hogwarts, a podcast, brings everyone to the Great Hall for a magical discussion. Hogwarts, a podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, welcome back on in. This is Season 8, Episode number 16 of the Outlap F1 podcast. The F1 circuit continues to make its way through the European season. It's the 2026 Belgian GP review show. You've got Andy. I'm along with Cody tonight, and we just wrapped up talking about a bit of a perplexing Belgian GP, if I'm being honest with you, because it left me more questioning things than anything else. But what did this round do to the driver and constructor standings? Cody, if you want to handle the top 10 of the drivers, I will recap the teams.
Alrighty, for the driver standings, Kimi Antonelli extends his lead with his win this weekend. He's in first place for Mercedes, sitting at 204 points now, which puts him 45 points ahead of second place, which is now Lewis Hamilton for Ferrari, sitting at 159 points. Just 5 points ahead of, but still ahead of George Russell following his retirement here. So George is for Mercedes at 154 points. Fourth place is Charles Leclerc, who has had, another really good weekend. Definitely coming back into form this season after a rough start. Charles is in fourth for Ferrari at 126 points. Fifth place is held by Lando Norris for McLaren at 103 points. Oscar Piastri just a little behind him in sixth place at 92 points. And then Oscar is just 1 point ahead of my man Max Verstappen in seventh place at at 91 points following his third place on the podium. Isaac Hadjar ended up having, I would say, a pretty good weekend for himself, despite having a penalty following qualifying. He has a good finish, gets some points, so he's in 8th place for Red Bull at 60 points. Pierre Gasly, didn't just missed out on points this time out. Pierre Gasly still sitting at 42 points in 9th place for Alpine. And then wrapping up the top 10 is Liam Lawson for Racing Bulls, sitting at 39 points. What are the team standings?
All right. So Mercedes, no surprise here, way out in front on 358 points. P2, solidly in that position now, is Ferrari with 285 points. P3 also kind of feels like this is just where they're going to finish this year, is McLaren on 195. P4, the hard-charging Red Bull Racing is trying to get the McLarens a run for that P3 spot now. They are up to 151 points. Big gap then to P5 is Alpine at 61. They are now tied with Racing Bulls, who've shown some better form recently. So they are also on 61 points, but losing just on countback. P7, big gap then to the Haas team. Definitely losing out on some of the development war, as it looks like, but they remain on 21 points. P8 is Williams. We talked about their problems. Car definitely overweight and some unhappy drivers. They check in with 11 points. P9 is Audi. Good showing for Gabby Bortoletto. Audi now on Williams' back for that P8 position. A bit clear of P10. Aston Martin, despite being way in the back for a long, long time, still have the 1 point advantage over P11 Cadillac. We're still waiting to get off the mark. All right. Well, you've heard our takes on the Belgian GP. What did you guys think about this race? We've got our contributors here. We'll start, as we are apt to do, with Rachel Fleming, who delivers yet another great recap. Cody, what does she got?
All right. Thank you, Rachel, for your email. And she says, well, what can I say about this race? It was better than I expected. I was not expecting a fight for the win, so my expectations have been exceeded. I would say a fight for the win is maybe a little bit of a generous way to put it, but at least there was a change in lead there. I felt George's, okay, I understand. I felt George's upset, and I was just as devastated for him. Personally, I felt the crash was a racing incident and didn't warranty a penalty for Hamilton, so we're in agreement there. I really hope George goes on from here, but at this moment, it's not looking good. What did warrant a penalty was, but didn't receive one, was that Charles and Oscar moment. I have no idea how Charles got away with that one. Same here, all on the same page so far. Norris drove well and was unlucky with his pit stop. I think that cost him 6th place. Audi watch, Nico in 13th. It's still on 0 points. He needs to score some points soon, but Bort, once again, was brilliant and was the best of the rest and got 8th for some more vital points for Audi. Perez watch started okay, but I swear that car is made out of Lego. As the suspension broke and he was out. And lastly, Alonso watch. I sat and watched some of his race via the driver tracker, which Rachel has on her TV at the same time. And it was nice watching the views of the circuit as nothing else was happening, barring being lapped. 1 minute behind Bottas and 2 minutes behind Ocon was the next car up, or Ocon was the next car up after that. The lawnmower desperately needs that upgrade. Being lapped twice at Belgium rounds off a humiliating time for that spec of Aston Martin. Yeah, I feel like we're really pretty much on the same page across the board here, Rachel. I think I'm in agreement with just about everything. I do feel bad for George. He was not having the strongest weekend, especially considering how far Antonelli was out in front with that pole position. Would have thought it would have been easy slotting into P2 for George. He's continuing to struggle to squeeze the same performance out of his car. But yeah, you really got to feel just about any time that someone who's a front runner, especially, gets spinned out on that first lap, because your whole race is ruined. We're never going to know just where he would have finished up. I don't think he would have been in it for the win, but I think he probably could have made a really good run for second place and kept himself more in that championship hunt. But now he's, got just that much more to climb. The mountain is looking a little rough at this point, so we'll have to see if they can still make it into a fight here as we get into the later part of the season.
Yeah, I mean, George was very, very upset on the radio. I don't know if you had a chance to hear it, but they didn't broadcast it. But it was very spicy what he was saying in the car before he hopped out after the car wrecked. Basically saying, I had no sock state of charge down that straight, didn't understand why, and basically called it unacceptable. Unacceptable. Very, very fiery language from George Russell getting out of the car, not something we're accustomed to seeing so much on track. I mean, we've heard Russell get fiery before, but usually not while still in the car, and clearly a message for Mercedes management that he was not a happy bunny with. Like I said, I don't know if it was the spec of engine or it was the battery deployment or something. He clearly felt that he was in a deficit to his teammate about. And now you open up Toto Wolff's management skills yet again, and now he has a bit of a conundrum that he's got to deal with. I can only imagine that, Kimi didn't do anything wrong. He went out, he raced his race and was dominant as he should have been. So I don't know. I saw some quotes from Toto that he was being more apologetic on the George side of things, that they didn't equip him as well as they could have been. So at least they're standing up and taking accountability for it. But yeah, not a good feeling right now for George Russell, who you would, coming into the year and coming into the reg set and everything, especially given the first race and how great he looked. You thought for sure that this was just going to be kind of his go at this, and it's just not happening for him. So we will see how he can respond from that. I am with Rachel on, not a penalty for sure. Was a penalty on the Leclerc incident. I agree there. And I thought Lando drove the wheels off his car today and was not rewarded because McLaren didn't want to get aggressive. Yet, in Canada, we're putting rain tires on it to get super aggressive. So pick one. I don't know. Audi watch. Yeah. I thought Bortoletto, I think, is doing very, very well in that car. Coming good at an important time of the year for him, because we're right in the middle of silly season. And if he needs to prove to Audi that he's worth the drive, I think he's doing that. Two, it also increases his stock for future drives later on down in his career, unless the Audi program can get to where it wants to. In terms of the Perez watch, I just saw yet another retirement. It's so weird. The parts and stuff just keep falling off of that Cadillac. Like I really don't understand it.
I think though, like, we really got to remember that pre-season we were kind of expecting this kind of stuff to happen with Cadillac. You got to remember, this is a brand new team. They didn't buy an existing team. This is a whole new outfit building a Formula One car for the first time. We knew there was going to be a lot of growing pains going on here. At the beginning of the season, we were saying we would just be really happy if they made a car that could, finish the race. And this didn't really happen this time out, at least not for Perez. But I would say that this retirement is far less embarrassing than recently, where they put new upgrades on their car and it caused the cars to overheat and retire within like 2 laps.
That's true.
They're at least not doing that bad. And even that, like, I can kind of forgive them for, because you're brand new to this. You don't really know what kind of stuff to look for just yet, and how to maybe completely troubleshoot all of those upgrades before you get them on the car. So they had Bottas finish. Is a lap down, but he did finish, and he still finished in front of Fernando Alonso. So as far as I'm concerned, that car is delicate and prone to breaking down, but it's doing better than I expected at this point.
Fair enough. I actually kind of agree with that. It's tough to rake a whole lot of criticism on it when they're also learning, like, as a team, all of the tracks for the first time. Bottas and Perez obviously know that the circuits, and that's kind of why they're in the car. But they're all kind of getting their crash course literally in Formula One, and I think we got spoiled, I think, with what Haas did when they came in and they were scoring points early, and you have to understand how much of a aberration and not the norm that was. And I don't think we celebrate that enough, just to how good when they came in they really were. But anyway. All right, so moving on. We've got Dave Doherty. What has he got, Cody?
All right. Thanks, Dave, for your email. Dave says, hello, F1 team. How are you? I am doing fantastic, if ever so slightly hungover. Well, let's talk about the Hamilton racing incident with George Russell. That reminded me of a similar incident in the 2022 Grand Prix when Alonso and Hamilton did a similar thing. Yes, I remember that one very well. That was the one where Hamilton's car kind of flew up in the air a little bit. And Fernando said something about Lewis not knowing how to drive anywhere but from first, which was pretty spicy. My question is, this is Dave, my question is, was that a racing incident? In my opinion, yes. Since F1 Twitter has been talking about it, also, was Ferrari feeling that pressure of operating the race since Ferrari had ding-donged Oscar? But it's nice to see Kimi racing Leclerc, and my boy is incredible. I love watching him on the track and off the track, and he's got a perfect personality that makes him lovable. My driver of the day is Leclerc. Now, forgive me if I'm getting this wrong, but I'm assuming when Dave's talking about his boy being incredible, is that Kimi or Leclerc?
No, it's Kimi.
It's Kimi. Okay. That's what I thought, because not to say that Leclerc doesn't have a good personality. I actually think he's one of the more kind of friendly and down to earth of the drivers, it seems. But yeah, Kimi, I just really like watching Kimi because he's still got that childish pep to him, I guess, because he's still so young. It's crazy to me that he hasn't even had his 20th birthday and he's leading the F1 Drivers' Championship by some margin. Knocking on wood for him here. He could end up being the youngest F1 Drivers' Championship by a significant margin, like over 3 years we're talking here. And that was Sebastian Vettel, who is currently the youngest champion. But anyway, yes, he has a very friendly, playful, positive personality, and it is really good to see that. To see just how excited he is to be in the position he is, and how much he's enjoying his current run of success. And it seems to just be instilling even more confidence into him, because we've seen just as recently as last year a young driver in a position to make maybe an unexpected run for the championship. We saw that last year in Oscar Piastri, who drove fantastically for the first 2/3 of the season. And then we don't know exactly what happened, if it was all just bad luck or, poor form, but it kind of seemed like the situation was getting the better of Oscar a little bit last year as we got closer to the end of the season. We're not really seeing that so far with Kimi. He's been rock solid. And even when he's had misfortune, like his car has had some very unlucky retirements a couple times so far this year, he's bounced back each time and continues to be right at the front during qualifying and the race every weekend so far.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot about him that you can't root for. There's no really aspect of his personality where I ever I'm not annoyed by the exuberance or anything. And I think it's fresh, and he's definitely living the best life right now. And you just kind of are kind of along for the ride, and he invites that, and it's part of his personality that he's inviting people in to share in that. And that is a positive thing. And you look at just the overall racecraft, and I don't know if it's a combination of, I think he just speaks to this reg set probably better right now than anybody else is able to do so. And because he really doesn't know a whole lot of other, at least in F1, other than the 1 year that he had. This is kind of all he knows. So he's just kind of going with what he knows. And he's like, oh, well, I hit button and button go fast and car go quick, and I'm happy about it. So, it's kind of like he's almost too stupid to know what he's really doing, but he clearly understands what he's doing, because you saw it in the British Grand Prix when the car was failing. He's like, I'm still going to try to get this point, because he knows that those things can come back later on, which shows I think a good deal of maturity there. So yeah, there's a lot to like about, if he's going to be the youngest world champion, he's going to be a fitting one because he's definitely gone out and earned it as far as as my opinion is. We talked about the different incidents. We're all kind of in agreement. It just seems like across the punditry that I've read, it's like 90-10. The Hamilton penalty isn't one, and the Leclerc penalty should have been. So I think we can all majority rules on that one and just kind of call it. That's how we see it. I don't know that Ferrari felt pressure from Antonelli. I think they were surprised to be up there. And I think, I was encouraged that once Antonelli made the pass, that Leclerc was able to stick in that overtake mode for a few laps. So at least it wasn't like, oh, pass is done, job done, go home. That's important for Leclerc. I thought that the radio transmission that he got where they're trying to tell him, hey, look, don't give up, this is not over yet, is important. You make Kimi Antonelli finish those laps. You keep him honest because your only hope at that point was a mistake and it just didn't come. But that was the right thing to do. So yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of all my thoughts on that. Dave, thank you very much for the submission. We move on to the formula. Cody, what does he have to say?
All right. Thank you, Mr. Formula, for your email. And he says, you know what? That was a great race weekend. Even the TV direction was pretty good. Spa is such an amazing circuit. I hate to see it go to an alternating year schedule. Oh, man, yeah, I kind of forgot about that. This one is a bucket list destination for my family. I'm ecstatic to see Charles find his mojo again. He was at a critical turning point earlier this season when Lewis had his number. He's a good guy and a great talent, and I'm glad he's back on form. And because I know Rachel is listening, I'll keep my George blasts on mute for just this one weekend. Kimi is something else, though. That rookie card I have is creeping up in value. Oh, there you go. That's actually probably a pretty good one to have. Yeah, we were just singing the praises of Kimi and how good we think he's doing. Again, I do really kind of feel for George because it's got to be pretty painful to go into the season. You rock the first race and take home the win by a huge margin. You think, finally, this is my time. Got to remember, George got kind of screwed when he went to Mercedes. They had just been dominant for God knows how many years, 8 years. And he heads over to them just when we switch regs and all of that dominance falls to the wayside. And now he's got that dominant car again. And lo and behold, his teammate, who's only got one F1 year under his belt right now, is apparently a wizard when it comes to these regs. So yeah, it's a tough break for him for sure. I am also very excited to see Charles getting his mojo again. I really didn't think it was going to take very long because I heard it's crazy how, you hear on social media, people get so polarized so quickly. I've seen so many things about how Leclerc is done or washed, and now that Hamilton is doing well, it's really showing where he's at. I think I think Charles is one of the best drivers out there. In fact, I would go so far as to say, going into the season, I've felt that he is probably currently the second best overall driver, maybe just second to Max Verstappen, in my opinion. And, we saw this with Lewis, where you're the greatest driver in the world and you switch to a set of regs that just doesn't really jive with your driving style, and it shows. And I think that's what we were seeing with Leclerc is, they went over to these new regs. It's a very different way of driving the cars. Some people are catching on quicker than others. And Leclerc is a master in qualifying, where under previous regulation sets, you are truly pushing the car to the absolute limit. So I think it's kind of hard to show that as much with these current set of regulations. And he's just now starting to really get a hang of what he's got to do. So I'm glad to see that he's doing that because it does really show just how talented he is.
Yeah, I mean, these regs took what he did best, which was lean on it in qualifying and extract lap time by sheer force, and really puts that to the side. And it's the same thing when I would say with why is Max not as dominant in these regs? Why is Lando not as dominant in these regs? Because they all kind of wanted to drive the car the same way. I would always kind of put them in. These were the qualifying pushers that would always try to build that up and push to that limit. I think Max does it better than anybody when he's on form. And I would say Leclerc is second, and Lando is inconsistent when he does it. Like sometimes he does it and it's great. And then there's other times where he does it and he damn near wrecks the car like he did this weekend. It's kind of the same type of thing. But that having been said, this set of regs takes that and really penalizes it, because if you screw up that deployment in the first part of the lap, you are dead to rights by the end of that lap. Like there were times, especially like in some of the practices where I went, oh, why does it seem like all the McLarens are just not getting it in the first sector? And then, but their overall lap time would still be okay. And I would look at the second sector and go, okay, they were clearly trying to make it there. And then they were trying to save something left in the battery for the third sector, which is not something that a lot of other teams were doing. So you're seeing this convergence of different strategies also going on. And it takes a while if you're just a hard charging driver like a Leclerc or a Lando or a Max, to find out what that limit is. Because once they find it, then they get more confident in it, and you see kind of these results. And talent will shine through in any formula, I think, at the end of the day. So, yeah, it's good to see Charles kind of get back on it. It's a guy that is important to the championship. He's important to Ferrari. He's a guy that Ferrari invested a lot of money and a lot of time into. So, but, I know we live in this recency bias of week to week, but let's all step back a little bit and understand the big picture here.
Mm-hmm. And then last little bit here about it being on your bucket list. I would love to go see a race at Spa. Just be out there in the forest and hopefully be in a position where you can watch cars go flying up Eau Rouge and Raidillon. I do still, following this race, while I am sad that it is going to an alternating schedule for now, I think even with this type of cars, Spa just isn't the absolute best for modern Formula One cars. Like, even with the different way of these cars racing and, having kind of the yo-yo back and forth thing from deployment and stuff like that, it was still kind of a boring race, in my opinion. So I don't really know what you got to do to make Spa like a real banger of a race again. But at the very least, having it on just every other year will make it kind of that much more of like a treat.
Yeah,
so
it's more.
I'm trying to feel a little good about it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to do this among the backdrop of, we knew this going, and we talked about it in our preview, that this was going to be a mega energy starved circuit, and boy, did that come to fruition in a lot of places. So much so that Formula talks about the TV direction. One thing we didn't see that I thought was kind of telling, you didn't see the state of charge on anybody. Those graphics were not to be found at all. And probably for good reason, because the onboards, there were parts of the onboards that were just, I'll just be honest with you, painful. Now, the mitigations have helped, but it was still painful in certain sections of it. You can't deny that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you mentioned Spa, I wanted to give a shout out to somebody who sent us some pictures who looked like he was having himself a great weekend. I wanted to give a shout out to @FeastK_F1, who was sending us pictures and giving me Lewis Hamilton updates, and he had a really good vantage right from the main straight. I hope he had himself a blast. He looked like he was having a great time. So as Spa goes away, and his comment was that, and he may go in other years, he said what he thought was so much better was they were so much more organized as a track, and it was a lot cleaner. Because I think that it's sometimes been a criticism that they sometimes let, because there's so much general admission that, it sometimes gets hard to try to clean it up over the course of the weekend. And by Sunday, it's pretty rough. That was not the case this year, at least according to him. So shout out to Spa on a good job there. All right. Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for all the interaction all over the course of the weekend and for your thoughts on the race. We appreciate them as always. We will move now into our awards. We shall start with the rubbish. Cody, I'll let you go first here. What you got?
All right, my rubbish award is going to go to Ferrari for that unsafe release for Lewis Hamilton during his pit stop. We really don't like to see any safety issues or injuries in Formula One. It does take pretty much all the fun out of it. I think we got, everyone was really lucky that this was not a more serious incident. And on one hand, it does sound a little silly for the FIA to pretty much be like, oh, well, we're going to penalize you. We're going to fine you 2/3. And, maybe we won't fine you the rest if you can give us, 2,000 words on why you've been a very naughty boy. But, I guess at the same time, you do really want the team to thoroughly review what happened and how they can avoid it going forward. And I really think that's about the best you can do because, like I said before, it's a dangerous sport. You're trying to make a pit stop happen in 2 seconds or less, which is incredible and leaves so much room for bad things to happen. So, honestly, I think it's fantastic that we don't see things like this happen more often. And I do think that it's really good that when it does happen, that it's taken seriously, even if there aren't major consequences.
Yeah, I mean, my objection isn't that the FIA didn't take it seriously. They clearly did. My point is that they should determine whatever they were going to do by the end of the race, so that at least from the sporting sense, we should know what's happening, and that all the people that went to this race, and it looked like it was a complete sellout, should know kind of what the result is. We shouldn't have to wait 2.5 hours after the race ends to finally find out what happens with this unsafe release. And if they wanted to suspend the decision until next week, and then if they thought it was super egregious and give Lewis a grid penalty for the next race, I'm okay even with that. And not that I want to subscribe to that, but I would have felt better about okay, we're going to look at this. We have to take the time to get this right. That's all fine. I get that. But get the sporting aspect of it away. There's a safety aspect and a sporting aspect. Get the safety aspect done, and I think you're a lot better. My rubbish is just stewarding decisions that left us all as fans, once again, questioning our reality. I can't tell you anymore what the decisions are going to be when I look at an incident that I think I see what I think I see, and I go on my experience and I say, that shouldn't be a penalty. That's lap 1. Where would you expect Lewis to go? He can't disappear there. That gets a penalty, but he gets a half a penalty and not the full penalty, which is the total cop-out of the whole thing. And then the other one with Leclerc and Piastri, where I said, slam dunk, that's Leclerc penalty. And even Leclerc fans that I saw on social media were saying, I can't defend that. That was a penalty. Anyway, what are we doing? I don't get it. So frustrating. All right, we'll move on to analysis paralysis. Cody, I'll let you go first again. What you got?
My analysis paralysis is really the same as your rubbish award. I just decided it was going to slot in a little better here. But the analysis paralysis is going to go to, I suppose, the FIA for not giving Lewis Hamilton a penalty for the lap 1 incident. For giving Hamilton a penalty for the lap 1 incident, but not giving Leclerc for the run into Piastri. I think they got those backwards. And I think they have a little bit of explaining to do on that one. The explanations that you told me the FIA gave for those, I'm not really sure I'm satisfied with that. So maybe they need to take a little closer look at things.
Yeah, and I did read the documents, and I come away reading the documents going, all right, whatever.
If you say so.
Yeah, if you say so. I mean, you're the guys. And something I didn't bring up, and I'm not a fan of doxing stewards or putting them out there. I read the names of the stewards who are working this one, and I didn't recognize them. So that also makes me a little leery where I go, I wonder if this is our first time doing some of this. Just makes me wonder a little bit. They were not names that I'm used to seeing in the documents. It's not to say that they're not qualified, not to say that they didn't pass whatever tests were necessary to get into those positions, but they were names that I, as a aficionado of these types of things, just didn't recognize. That's all I'm saying. I'm not accusing anybody of anything here. My analysis paralysis goes out to my boys in McLaren, who I thought just did a great job of wasting really good race pace from Lando Norris today. You had the moment. The virtual safety car was there. I get boxing Oscar early first because he's in front. That's fine. Why not double stack there? Even if Lando loses 2 positions, he was showing you he had the pace to clearly make up those positions and get right back into the fight. And then you're no longer the pit stop down that you are. You got the out. Why did you not play it? And then the other part was, okay, you didn't play it, but then you didn't get off you decided you were going to get off the strategy that you were going to, but you did so too late and therefore ended up in the middle. And in the end, net result, you're 10 seconds down on Hadjar. And no way to make that up despite 3 or 4 purple laps right in a row. So Lando was driving his ass off today, and it just P7 is not justified. Like, there have been other results where I've said, oh, that flattered them. This result does not correlate with how good the car actually was. All right, so we'll move into Dark Horse of the Day. I'll go first with this one. Rachel, this one's for you. Again, we need more back-to-back Bort license plates in the gift shop, please. Gabby Bortoletto taking the Audi up to P8 yet again. Back-to-back results, good, important points for Audi and good for Bortoletto's young career. Cody, what you got here?
Yep, it's going to go to Bort. Continuing to show that he really does deserve to be here now. Like, I guess before Gabriele Bortoletto coming into Formula One, like, you know, I watch F2, right? I follow F2 and even a little bit of F3, and was seeing him come through the ranks and thought he was, you know, like really good, but I wasn't like completely sold on him being, you know, someone who's going to be in Formula One for a lengthy period of time. You know, we've had some guys come through, like Zhou Guanyu, who stuck around for a few years trying to show their stuff, but never really got the opportunity to do so. And I feel like Bortoletto is kind of lucked into a little bit into a position where Audi is actually maybe a little more competitive than we were expecting, allowing him to really show his stuff. And he's showing his stuff up against Nico Hülkenberg, who is a proven talent over a very lengthy period of time. So I think this really shows well on Gabriele Bortoletto, and he's really arguing his case that he deserves to be here and might be Audi's driver for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, he's definitely sowing the seeds, and he's working with, I think, one of Lando Norris's ex-engineers is I think his main engineer. So it's a guy I recognize. And they're building something. You can clearly tell they're building something. The Mattia Binotto hair, which was all in full force this weekend, by the way. Shout out to that conditioner. Whatever conditioning product he uses, I'd like to get some, because that hair, you could land a plane on that thing, man. That was something else. But anyway, they're definitely building something. Binotto's a very smart guy. He's got the engineer's mind. You can tell that they're trying to figure things out. I'd like to see Hülkenberg get back more on the form too, but you have to wonder if this is really all he's got left. Did time finally catch up with Nico Hülkenberg? That's kind of the question. I think that the second half of the season, they're going to have to make some hard decisions maybe in the near future, but we'll see kind of where that goes. All right, we will move on to driver of the day. I'll go first with this one. Despite the fact that I thought he should deserve the penalty, I thought Charles Leclerc, other than that, drove actually a pretty damn near good race. Nice to see him back on form. I'll give him the slight nod, even though he doesn't get the win. But Cody, what you got here?
I'm going to have to give this one to Kimi Antonelli, just because of the fact that he never really looked like there was anything in doubt throughout this whole weekend. Like, you know, got a very clear, strong pole position, got by Max right away after Max, got past him on lap 1 there, and didn't even really run into any issues getting back by Leclerc. You know, he didn't seem like he was fazed by the frustrating events of the pit stop sequences with, kind of him getting screwed over by the virtual safety cars pretty much twice. And he, took it in stride and made it work and still came back for the win.
All right. Very good there. All right. So we'll move into our prediction results. And in pure World Cup fashion, we have a draw. We each scored 3 points. Cody, you got 3 points. You got the pole sitter. You had Kimi Antonelli there. You got P1 on the podium because you had Kimi Antonelli there as well. You also got a P4 bonus pick with Lewis Hamilton scoring that for you. I got 3 points because my lap times were slower. and the lap times were very slow around here. Never mind, we were talking 4 seconds slower than the pole time last year. Wow. So I got the pole time because I was slower than you. I got the fastest, air quote, slowest lap time. The slowest, fastest lap time was mine. So I got the point there. And I got P6 because I had Isaac Hadjar coming home in P6. That tied it back up for me. That leaves the record. I have 2 wins. You have 1 win. And we have 2 ties on the season moving forward. All right. Well, the Spa weekend is now behind us. We're going to move to Hungary, where I think the focus is going to be big update packages for Aston Martin, big update packages promised also for McLaren, and a much better looking, I think, circuit overall for these cars. I have a funny feeling that this is going to look a lot more like we would normally expect Formula One to look. We're not going to be talking as much about the deployment, and I expect those graphics to be magically back next week. But Cody, any big thoughts? We got one more race till the break. What you think? What's your thought?
I think, in my opinion, Hungary is kind of like a little bit of a sleeper hit for Formula One, because I don't think a lot of people like look at the calendar and say like, yeah, Hungary's track, like that's where I really want to go see them. But despite that, it seems like it really does crank out some exciting races. It's been the home of some very significant first wins. Let's see here. I know Esteban Ocon got his first win there. Lewis Hamilton got his first win with Mercedes at Hungary. Daniel Ricciardo get his first win in Hungary. Can't remember if that one, if
Maybe.
that's one of them or not.
I don't know. I'd have to check that.
Anyway, there's been a lot of memorable races here, and unfortunately, a lot of them for Max Verstappen have been memorable for the wrong reasons. So I'm hoping that we don't see that come from this one. But I think it's a pretty good one, and I think at the end of the first half, going into the summer break, is probably a good time for this one. So yeah, the same thing as you said before. I'm really crossing my fingers that the cars look better here than they did around Spa. They don't look like they're going to have as much of an energy starve problem. So I think it'll be a good one.
Yeah, and so we will be back with a preview episode to get you ready for that weekend, as we do a back-to-back shuffle here to close out the first half of the season. So we'll be back with a preview episode that we'll hit you up with, and then we will watch the race and watch the action over the course of the weekend, and we'll react to it next weekend as well. So stay tuned for all of that. Until then, stay safe out there, ladies and gentlemen. It's a crazy world. We had Canadian wildfire smoke dive in make everything look like something out of a Stephen King novel. So it's been all very, very weird. The weather just continued. This has been a weather year for the books, man. But anyway, stay safe out there. We'll be back to you with a preview for the next race. And as always, may all your laps be fast.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Outlap F1 podcast. If you like what you heard, click that subscribe button and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. If you want to connect with us outside of the show, check out our website at www.outlapf1.com. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at outlapf1 podcast, or email us at chatnow@outlapf1.com. As always, thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you on the next one.